One gone, one back, and Chris Burke joins us today.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's a Wednesday edition, everybody, of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Matt Derry with you on a Wednesday, March 27th. In a Thursday, March 28th, busy program. Chris Burke from theathletic.com, formerly the Lions beat writer at The Athletic, longtime at SI, now working as a draft editor for theathletic.com, is going to join us momentarily. We'll talk to Chris all about Lions news, what's going on with the team, what he thinks about the draft. Now, listen to this. We recorded Chris this morning. This was before the Josh Reynolds news I'm about to tell you about and the Nate Sudfeld news. Yeah, Nate the Great is back. So this was recorded before the Josh Reynolds news, so keep that in mind as you're watching this interview. Thanks for making us your first listen and checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, Locked On Lions on Twitter, at Locked On Lions. Matt Derry, Facebook fan page, on Twitter, at Derry Speaks. And also, thank you for subscribing and watching us for free each and every day on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel. Before we get to Chris Burke and the draft and everything going on with the Lions, couple of notes that took place this afternoon and this evening. Number one, we touched on it yesterday. Brad Holmes said it. Everybody he wanted in free agency on his A list, the Lions got. He said the one fish that was still out there remaining that they wanted to keep and wanted to reel back in was wide receiver Josh Reynolds. Well, the news came down today from Adam Schefter of ESPN that Josh Reynolds has agreed to a 2-year reported $14 million deal with the Denver Broncos. He is going to leave the Lions and join the Broncos. Number one, good for Josh. At age 29, looking to get a multi-year deal and getting some pretty good money at $7 million a year. And the wide receiver draft class is great. A lot of the free agent wideouts are already off the board. So for Reynolds to get multiple years and get him from the Broncos is a nice score for him. You got to be happy for him. A lot of Lion fans will remember that horrible day, the NFC Championship game, where Josh Reynolds had his worst game. But for the most part, he was a fantastic leader in that clubhouse, in that locker room, and a really good football player, and had a really good year last year with 7 touchdowns. And Jared Goff, really his outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown, really his most comfortable target. But my guess is the Lions were likely offering a 1-year deal, similar to the many deals that they've signed here. They got Carlton Davis signed up for 1 year. They got Marcus Davenport on a 1 year. So my guess is they weren't going to 2 years with Josh Reynolds, more likely just 1. So now he heads to Denver to join the Broncos. That's a nice get for Denver to get a veteran receiver that knows how to win, knows how to play, and will help whoever that young quarterback is that Denver is going to have on that roster now that, of course, Russell Wilson is gone. So that's number one. Josh Reynolds out. What does that mean for the Lions? Well, there are still some free agent wide receivers out there, or as Chris Burke will tell us later, he likes some wide receivers, maybe at number 29 for the Lions. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. They've got Khalif Raymond, Jamison Williams, of course. Donovan Peoples-Jones is back. Maurice Alexander, Tom Kennedy, guys like that, currently on the roster. But Josh Reynolds, at least for now, now is gone. And the Lions, you got to figure, are going to add to that wide receiver room. This just in early evening as we're recording, Nate Sudfeld is back. See, this is why Brad Holmes loves to mess with me, loves to mess with the media. All right. The kicking situation and the backup quarterback situation has always been a circus for 3 years. This year, when they got Teddy Bridgewater toward the end of the preseason, that was a great signing. And he was a great backup and sort of insurance policy for Jared Goff, who stayed healthy all year. Teddy barely played. Well, Bridgewater retires. Lions looking for a veteran backup quarterback. You know they've got Hendon Hooker kind of waiting in the wings, but they have brought back after he got injured in the preseason, but before that, he was terrible. Nate Sudfeld is getting another shot in Detroit. I don't know what you want me to say. Nate Sudfeld isn't good, but again, you got to add some veteran pieces. You got to have competition. You got to have 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks during the preseason and during training camp. You knew they were going to sign somebody. They weren't going to go into training camp with just Goff and Hooker. So yes, they are bringing back one of their own after he got injured during the preseason last year. Even though was it the Jacksonville home preseason game where Sudfeld was just abysmal, but he is back, signing and re-signing with the Lions. Nate the Great returning to Detroit. All right, coming up next, we are going to talk to Chris Burke from theathletic.com, get his thoughts on the offseason. We'll do that coming up next right here on Locked On Lions. But first, we got to tell you that Locked On Lions is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You know we love FanDuel, right? Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of this NCAA tournament. We got Sweet 16 games coming up tomorrow. All right. Purdue still there. North Carolina, all the number one seeds. Houston, UConn. You think they're going to win it all? You think it's going to be all chalk? Put some money down on these teams at FanDuel. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's number one sports book. That's right. Because right now, new customers at FanDuel get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can pick who's going to win it all at FanDuel. Go to the website, FanDuel.com/lockedon, and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. This is going to be fun. We're visiting with an old friend, I guess you could say, the legendary Chris Burke, long time at SI, long time at The Athletic covering the Lions. And this past year kind of became an editor via the draft for theathletic.com. But we wanted to check in with Chris here on Locked On Lions today. Good to see you, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm trying to remember the last time I've been on, but
I know.
Excited to be back.
It's been a while. I know you kind of handed the mantle over to Colton Pouncey, who does a nice job. And I subscribe and read The Athletic all the time, and you're kind of now kind of out of the spotlight. How was last season not hiking down to Ford Field 9-10 times?
Yeah, I mean, I missed the games. I didn't miss being out there every day for camp and for practices and stuff, although it's better now. Part of the reason I didn't like it towards the end, or I guess I had one season with Campbell's group, which was better, but some of those, not to go back to the bad old days, but some of those Patricia locker rooms were kind of an ordeal. So, it was fun to be on this side of it and kind of watch that season, like be at home with my kid and watch it and, get to interact a little more with the fans on Twitter and stuff. So I enjoyed that part of it. I just missed, it's been fun to be there for some of the playoff games and stuff, I'm sure.
Your focus obviously now is on the draft, and you've done a lot behind the scenes for theathletic.com about it. But first off, just look at this Lions offseason. What's interesting yesterday in Orlando, Brad Holmes said at the owners' meetings, hey, I hit on every free agent I wanted. Our A list, pretty much outside of Josh Reynolds, who they're still working on, but he got everybody. Do you believe him? Do you think they went, oh, Marcus Davenport, that's who we want. We don't want Danielle Hunter. I mean, do you believe him?
In general, I would say I don't believe it when guys say that, because I think everyone said, oh, we loved him from the start. I watched him 5 years ago. He's always been great. So in general, I don't believe that, but I do think you have to give Brad Holmes a little bit of a benefit of the doubt with some of the guys he's brought in here, and especially the guys that, Nick Baumgartner and I have talked about this on our podcast a little bit, but like the Anzalone signing back when it happened, and Aaron Glenn was like, well, this is the guy he could be. When he's healthy, we see him doing this, this, and this. And everyone else was sort of watching his tape going, well, that's not who you're getting. And obviously he's turned into what he is. So I think there is some of that, especially with guys that, Holmes has scouted, or, the coaching staff's been around, that you say, all right, well, let's see what Marcus Davenport has. Maybe he really is the two. Like, he's their second best pass rusher. We'll see what he has. But I mean, like I said, I think you give him the benefit of the doubt. I do think there's still some spots on this roster that you worry about a little bit, but it does feel like they're in a pretty good spot, like Holmes said.
What spots? Does that include corner in your mind, or do you look up and go, man, Carlton Davis, Amik Robertson, huge, and re-signing Mosley, who really wasn't on the team last year. Yes, that's a major upgrade at corner. Do you believe that?
I mean, I think it's an upgrade for sure. I mean, we sort of saw where they were at the end of that year, and it's impressive they were able to hang in there as well as they did with who was out there. I do think that it's an upgrade. I actually like Robertson quite a bit. I think he'll fit in. I think people like him here. He definitely, as Holmes mentioned at the owners' meetings, he definitely fits the mentality that they're going for there. And Aaron Glenn, I'm sure, will like him. So I think it's an upgrade. I mean, I still think you have to look at some depth there. I think you have to look at the long-term future of that position. Like, who's the guy you're developing for 3 years from now? I don't think you really see that. And so, yeah, I think cornerback's still on that list. I think safety to me is still on that list. Brian Branch obviously can solve a lot of problems for you, but there's not a ton of depth there. I think you have to count on Melifonwu now being a 17-game player, which, can he do that again? I guess we'll see. So that secondary is still a spot I would think that would be one they'll be looking at in the draft. And then, obviously the interior of the offensive line too. I think if you're talking long-term, especially, like, you're not going to go Glasgow, Kevin Zeitler for the next 5 years. So those are the two that really jump out.
What about receiver, Chris? And I want to get to some names. I know you're all over the draft in a second, but as far as where the Lions are now, could you see Brad at 29 if one of those, really speedy, big name guys is there, grab a receiver in the first round? And the Josh Reynolds situation is interesting because he's still out there, and Holmes made a point saying we want him back. But what do you think the holdup is there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the holdup is probably just that. What's Reynolds, 29, almost 30, I think. So this is probably his shot to get 2, 3, 4 years if he wants it. Probably his last chance to really hit one of the. He's not going to get a top of the market deal, obviously, but the Lions got him on a pretty good bargain last time. So I'm sure this is his last chance to kind of go out and just see what's there. And I don't know that what he's hoping for will materialize because, like you said, this is a really good receiver draft. I think a lot of teams at this point are just waiting, seeing if they can get a guy on a rookie contract who's, basically a younger version of what you're going to get on the market. So it wouldn't be a huge surprise if they circle back and wind up with him. But yeah, I mean, I think it is, to answer your question, no, it wouldn't surprise me really for them to do anything at this point, but a receiver at 29 feels like it's in play because where this class is, I think certainly beyond round 1, it's in play. Like rounds 2 and 3, there's a lot of guys there that could step in and help you.
Chris Burke with us from theathletic.com. Follow him on Twitter at Chris Burke NFL. It's interesting. So many teams have spent so much money, and it's been kind of the way of the world here. The NFL, we get to that Monday and it's crazy. But that's not what the Lions and Brad Holmes do yet. You get a DJ Reader on a nice team-friendly deal, it seems like, with 2 years, in Glasgow too. This is the way it works for the Lions, whereas other teams like Philly has been notoriously and did this year. Houston and Tennessee are ridiculous spenders. How do you like that kind of the philosophy? And do you think because Holmes is hitting the draft that you can have this free agency philosophy that Brad's had?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really it. I think they said from the start, right, it was going to be the draft, and then we'll kind of complement it with what else we can find in free agency, and we've sort of seen that play out. I mean, they're a really young core of guys here, and so I think with everything they've done this year, I mean, getting a guy like Zeitler is a move you make when you're like, all right, well, what's the one piece we're missing on offense? And same with Reader, like, what do we really need on this defense? All right, well, let's go find the best guy for that spot. And so I think that when they've had those opportunities, I mean, Carlton Davis was a pretty aggressive move given his contract and sort of what they gave up. And so I think that they've targeted those places they really need to target. But yeah, I mean, I think most of this is going to continue to go through the draft. I don't think they're ever going to be necessarily one of those big spenders in free agency. So I think this approach has made sense for them. And I think they've gotten good value. I mean, you look at the guys that they've signed, it's hard to say, well, they didn't need that guy or that was a bad idea. Like, I think everyone's made sense and fit within sort of the long-term future of this thing.
More with Chris Burke coming up next. I want to get his thoughts on the draft and some of the prospects that are out there and who could be Lions fits. Chris knows as well as anybody who kind of fits down at 222, as I call it, 222 Rodwood Drive. We will do that coming up next right here on Locked On Lions. Want to tell you first about our friends at Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry about getting tickets to anything that you're looking for, whether it's music, comedy, theater events, and of course, sporting events. We got opening day down at Comerica Park next Friday. You're looking for tickets. You want to buy them fast and easy online. Best place to do it is the Gametime app. Killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Love the view from your seat because you can click exactly where you're going to be, kind of even scan to your right and left so you have a feel of where you're going to be sitting when you're at that game, event, or whatever. See the view from your seat, like I said, all in prices, show your total up front. They got that. So you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps with Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with our friends at the Gametime app. Here's what you do. Download it, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account, redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Chris Burke with us from theathletic.com. What is a typical day for you like now, Chris? You used to have to jaunt down to Allen Park. Now behind the scenes, what are you up to?
At the moment, I'm trying to keep our 4-month-old puppy from jumping on the camera with me here. So that's part of what my day looks
all right.
like. Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of it is, I've got, obviously, like you mentioned, I'm sort of helping to run our draft coverage here. So a lot of it right now is actually working with Dane Brugler and getting his draft guide ready, which is for him a year-long project, and for me really a couple months worth of pretty intensive editing and production stuff. So that's really what we're working on now. But then crossing over and helping out with our Lions podcast and with Colton sometimes, and just a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, but pretty draft heavy, which has always been that. Back at SI, that's what I did a lot of too, was the draft stuff. So it's just been back in that world, which is I enjoy this part of the offseason stuff was always my favorite, the roster building stuff anyway. So kind of gets me back over there a little more.
It's interesting, Chris, because for years, the Hutch draft 2, Sewell 7, Hawkinson, when you were covering the team, top 10.
Yeah.
Now they're at 29. I mean, this is like weird territory. How does that change, you think, for Holmes, Ray Agnew, Dorsey, all those guys, Dan, up front in terms of how they're going to go about this, you think?
I think Holmes probably loves it, honestly. I mean, I think secretly, I don't know that he'd ever really say it out loud, although he's kind of hinted at it a couple of times, like that COVID draft year when no one could go to pro days and you had to just sort of trust your board and your scouting. I think he probably felt like he was way ahead of the game in that, because that's just sort of what he does, and he believes in, his approach to everything. So I think at 29, he's probably sitting there thinking, all right, well, we're going to find someone that everyone else is going to miss on for the first 28 picks. So, I do think that it obviously changes to some extent the level of guy you're getting. I mean, you're not getting Sewell at 29 unless you really get lucky. Yeah. So, and I think that's part of why we've seen
or Hutch for that matter,
or Hutch, right? Which I think is why you've seen the free agency approach. And this is what I think most good GMs try to do, is make sure that they're not leaving a desperation spot for them. So you get, again, they've got their starting lineup, and most of their 2 deep filled out at this point. So who's your guy that's going to help you for the next 4 or 5 years from that spot? And I think, there's a lot of possibilities for him there that should be pretty interesting to talk about for the next month.
It's interesting. There was the mock draft that we did for the Lockdown Network. All the hosts did it. I'm not supposed to give away who I picked for the team, and I hate the pick. I'm not drinking on him. But you look up and you hear Dan Campbell say, "Oh, we need more corners. Let's go." And Holmes says, "Nah, we're good." They're not saying the same thing, at least in Orlando yesterday, on cornerback. So I'm still thinking maybe I got a chance at 29 that it's going to be a corner, but what do you think?
I still think it's a chance. I also think that's one of those spots where you start to look at it. Okay, well, is there a safety? Is there a hybrid guy? Obviously if Cooper DeJean's there, I think that makes sense, but I don't think he'll be there. But you start looking at, especially the type of defense where they started playing more towards the second half of the year is all right, well, let's just man it up and let's try and make some plays in the secondary. Let's take some chances and see if we can get a turnover. And so there's some guys, like Tyler Newbin from Minnesota's like top mid round 2. And all right, well, you sneak him up into round 1. I don't know. I think I do think secondaries on the board there. It's going to be really interesting because I think in a normal year you would say, well, that's a trade down spot. Let someone else come up. Let's get some picks. You got the draft in Detroit this year. Can you trade out a round 1?
I was going to ask you that. That crowd's going to be freezing cold, standing out there waiting for their team to pick, and then all of a sudden you go, "Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. We're going to add a couple of 2s and swap out." That would be a total buzzkill.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that. I don't think that should be the deciding factor in the room, and I don't think Holmes will be necessarily swayed a ton by that. But it is sort of this interesting subplot to the end of round 1, where like, maybe he does get swayed by the I mean, we see how he is with the fans. We see how they are in that room. Maybe they do get caught up in it a little bit and say, well, all right, our guy's there at 20. People will love this if we go up and get our guy while the crowd's there. Again, I don't think that'll be the deciding factor, but it is interesting to think about just how that all might play in, because it would be disappointing for however many thousands of people are down there on Thursday night if the Lions then suddenly, all right, well, yep, we'll come back tomorrow. We'll figure it out. I don't know, but it's a spot where you could do a lot of things.
We mentioned the line before. We haven't talked about edge. All right, let's say Davenport gets hurt again, and that's happened, whether it was New Orleans or Minnesota. I mean, they need to probably add another edge, don't they, in your mind? And could that be 29?
Yeah, I mean, I think they do. I know people really are high on people. When I say people, I say mostly the fans are really high on James Houston, but I don't know that you're counting on him necessarily to be a 12 sack a year guy. It'd be great if he was. I don't know that you're counting on it. So yeah, I think that's a spot. Chop Robinson's a name I think we've probably heard a lot, but I think there's a handful of them down there, like Darius Robinson.
Fans would love that.
Yeah, I think that would be a great one for him. That's a tough one because I think you talk about receiver, you're going to find some depth. I think there's some corners you can go get on day 2. I don't think the edge class is great. So if you want an edge who's going to step in and produce, you might have to get him early. I don't know that you're going to get a round 3 guy who's going to give you a ton of production this year. So again, that's sort of weighing, how desperate do you feel? How much you need a guy who's going to contribute right away at that spot? I do think that they probably need to get one, whether it's through the draft or just to go find another, sort of semi-proven free agent body somewhere.
Final thing, you've seen a lot of mocks. You're working with Dane, and Dane does his mocks, and obviously his draft Bible coming out. Are there some names that you see that are hovering around 25, 30, 35 that you go, oh, those are Lions? Those would be favorites that, someone said to me the other day, why can't they, they love speed. Go get Xavier Worthy. He's the fastest 40 time ever. He could be in play at 29, maybe, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would think so. I mean, I tweeted a couple times that I like Ladd McConkey is the one that sort of feels like a sneaky Lions option for me. Yeah. Just the way he plays, he's got some of that speed downfield for sure. And, just like I'd see him slotting in pretty well in that offense. And especially, I don't know how much with the wear and tear on his body, I don't know that you can count on Amon-Ra to play every single snap, every single year. So to me, he's like McConkey's sort of like it just fits in naturally there. And like Roman Wilson probably be the round 2 version of that if you want to go a little further. So I do think there's some of those receivers. I mean, the interior of the offensive line, like I know Colton drafted Jackson Powers Johnson the other day in our beat writer mock. Mm-hmm. And that one to me, like if he's there, especially given how banged up Frank Ragnow's been, sort of the hints about him not playing forever, like that's when you run to the podium, I think, and make that pick. And like Graham Barton and Cooper Beebe, a couple of those other guys that like that's a spot where you can get someone who's played for 3, 4, 5 years and can plug in right away. So I think that those names jump out. I mean, cornerback, like I said, DeJean, I think if he's there, like Ennis Rakestraw, I think like just his mentality fits what they want. And like I said, I sort of keep coming back to Newbin. I don't know that they would take a safety that high. I feel like it's a spot that Holmes likes to, other than Branch, because of just all the things he can do. I feel like that's a spot where Holmes thinks he can maybe nickel and dime it a little bit and get like a 5th rounder who can contribute. But I do think there are some playmakers at the top of the class that would be interesting, especially if they do trade down to like 35 or 36, which, as we just said, I don't know that they would do that, but from like in any other year, that might be the play.
Chris, great to see you. Always love connecting with you. We'll get your thoughts after the draft for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to come back.
You got it. There he is, Chris Burke with us. Check out his work at theathletic.com right here on a Wednesday edition of a Locked On Lions.